They thought they could laugh at her. They thought they could dismiss her, humiliate her, and strip away her dignity. But what they didn't realize was that she wasn't standing alone. Behind her was a lifetime of perseverance, a community of believers, and a legal team ready to remind the world that no one can deny a rightful place to those who have earned it. This story is not just about a bank. It is about something far larger. A story of dignity, justice, and the unshakable belief that perseverance in the face of adversity can transform the impossible into the inevitable. It begins with an ordinary day that quickly turns extraordinary. A woman, brilliant, determined, and accomplished, walked into the very institution she helped build, expecting respect, only to be met with laughter and scorn. In that moment, the weight of history pressed down to how many times have people of vision been mocked before their brilliance was recognized? How many leaders have faced rejection before their triumph? Yet this story is also about us, all of us, about the resilience within every community, the courage found in ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and the power of unity when injustice dares to rear its head. Because this is not just her fight. It is a mirror to the struggles faced by so many, a reminder that progress is never given freely but claimed through perseverance, courage, and the refusal to be silent. There are moments in life when the very people who should open doors are the ones who try hardest to close them. And yet, history has shown us time and time again no barrier, no insult, no dismissal can silence the resolve of someone who knows who they are and who they are meant to be. This story begins in the heart of a community bank, where a young black woman, sharp-minded, visionary, and resilient, walked into the very institution she helped build. She carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had earned her place, but also with the humility of someone who remembered the long road it took to get there. And yet, instead of respect, she was met with laughter. The staff dismissed her, ridiculed her presence, treated her as though she were an outsider in her own house. To them, her face did not fit the portrait of power. To them, her skin, her gender, her very being disqualified her from the seat she had already earned. But here is where the story takes a turn, because she did not allow their scorn to define her. She did not let their mockery extinguish her purpose. Instead, she remembered what her grandmother once told her. Dignity isn't given, it is lived. Power isn't granted, it is proven. So she left that bank with her head held high. And hours later, she returned. Not alone, but with her legal team, her allies, her proof, and the full weight of truth behind her. What once was laughter turned to silence. What once was arrogance turned to humility. And in that moment, she did more than reclaim her rightful place. She reminded everyone in that building, and everyone watching, that change is not born from the approval of the powerful, but from the courage of the persistent. Her story is not only hers. It belongs to every ordinary person who has ever been underestimated, every worker who has ever been told, "You don't belong," every neighbor who has been overlooked. It is the story of teachers who stay after school to make sure no child is left behind, of parents working 2 jobs but still finding time to sit at the dinner table with their kids, of communities that rebuild after storms, stronger than before. It is a story of perseverance, and it is a call to us all. Because this world will not always greet you with open arms. Sometimes it will laugh at you. Sometimes it will try to push you out. But it is in those very moments you must remember, dignity lived is dignity defended. And when you stand firm in who you are, change will follow. So tonight, let us draw strength from her story. Let us be reminded that progress is never handed over. It is fought for, worked for, and believed in. And let us carry forward the truth that no matter who doubts us, no matter who resists us, no matter who laughs at us, hope, courage, and perseverance will always have the last word. Because the future does not belong to the mockers. It belongs to the builders. It belongs to the dreamers. It belongs to those who stand up, rise again, and say with conviction, "I will not be denied." There are moments in history when an individual's very presence becomes a statement, when the way someone carries themselves speaks louder than any speech, and when walking into a room is not just an act of motion, but an act of meaning. Such was the case when the black CEO stepped into her own bank. The building itself stood tall and polished, the glass doors gleaming in the midday light, the kind of place designed to symbolize prosperity and strength. Inside, the air carried the scent of leather chairs, fresh coffee, the quiet hum of financial machinery. To most, this was just a bank. But for her, it was more than a place of transactions. It was a place of legacy. Years of tireless effort, vision, permanent determination had built the foundation that now sustained those walls. She had walked a long, difficult road to reach this point, and her every step that day carried the weight of that journey. She entered not as a stranger, not as a visitor, but as a leader. Her posture spoke of calm assurance, her expression carried grace, and her presence radiated authority. It was the entrance of dignity, dignity that had been earned through years of perseverance, through nights of uncertainty, through days of proving herself again and again in a world that too often doubted her. Yet as she crossed the polished floor, she could feel the eyes upon her. Instead of the warmth of welcome, she was met with hesitation. Instead of respect, she was met with smirks and whispers. The staff behind the counters and desks exchanged glances that carried disbelief. To them, this woman, young, black, and female, did not align with their picture of power. They had seen leaders before, but they expected them to look different, to sound different, to carry a different image of authority. But she did not falter. She walked forward with steady steps, every movement measured and intentional. She had learned long ago that dignity was not in waiting for others to recognize it. It was in embodying it, regardless of how others responded. Her very presence challenged their assumptions, and though they did not yet understand it, they were in the presence of someone who represented change. This was not just about a bank. This was about something far larger, the clash between perception and reality, between prejudice and progress. Her entrance was not only the story of one individual, it echoed the countless entrances of those who came before her. Men and women who had walked into boardrooms, classrooms, courtrooms, and offices where they were told they did not belong, who chose to carry themselves with grace anyway. Her steps carried memory. Memory of ancestors who had been denied access to buildings like this, who had been told to stay outside the doors of power. Memory of her own struggles as a child, watching her parents work tirelessly, saving every penny, believing in a better tomorrow. Memory of the sacrifices made along the way, the late nights studying the rejected applications, the dismissive words from those who doubted her capabilities. Each of those memories had shaped her into the leader she now was. And yet, even with all that history, even with all that proof of her worth, she found herself walking into resistance. This was the paradox of progress. To achieve what had never been achieved before is to walk a road that will not always be paved with acceptance. But that paradox did not intimidate her. It strengthened her. As she approached the front desk, she held her chin high. Her hands did not tremble. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady and clear. For in that moment, she was not simply walking into a building, she was walking into history. She was not just entering a bank, she was entering a battlefield of perception. And though she knew the laughter might come, though she knew the doubt might rise, she also knew that dignity was not something that could be laughed away nor erased by disbelief. The entrance of dignity is never about the reaction of others. It is about the inner strength that refuses to be shaken. It is about the calm confidence that speaks louder than ridicule. It is about walking forward, step by step, into spaces where you are underestimated and choosing not to shrink, but to stand tall. There are sounds that can cut deeper than words. The sound of dismissal, the sound of derision, the sound of a laugh not born of joy but of disbelief and arrogance. In that bank on that day, when the black CEO presented herself with poise and rightful authority, the air was broken not by applause, not by respect, but by laughter. It began quietly, like a whisper hidden in a smile, a smirk from one teller, a chuckle from another. Then it spread, like a ripple across water, gathering momentum until it became unmistakable. The sound filled the space, not in volume, but in meaning. It was the sound of doubt, the sound of people who believed they were secure in their assumptions. Laughter can sting in ways that anger does not. Anger at least acknowledges power, acknowledges threat. But laughter seeks to erase, to reduce, to render invisible. It carries the cruel suggestion that the target is not even worth taking seriously. And in that bank, those who laughed believed they were laughing at impossibility. The impossibility that this young black woman could be their superior, their leader, the one who had earned the seat of power they assumed belonged to someone else. But what those employees failed to understand is that laughter has never been strong enough to silence progress. Throughout history, those who brought change were met first with ridicule before they were met with recognition. The Wright brothers were laughed at before flight became reality. Civil rights leaders were mocked before justice took its first steps forward. Innovators, dreamers, and visionaries have always been targets of derision before they became makers of destiny. And yet, at the human level, in that moment, the laughter was personal. It was directed not at an idea, but at a person. A woman who had worked, sacrificed, persevered to arrive exactly where she stood. They laughed not just at her position, but at her very presence. It was not just her leadership they doubted, it was her identity, her very right to belong in that space. That is what made the sound so sharp, so heavy with insults. Still, she did not shrink. The laughter that rang through the room could not penetrate the armor of dignity she had built over years of trials. She had heard versions of that sound before, when she was a student who dared to excel beyond expectations, when she was a young professional who applied for positions not meant for her, when she spoke ideas in boardrooms that were met with smirks instead of respect. Each time she learned that the sound of laughter is fleeting, but the force of perseverance is lasting. It is important to understand the weight of what happened that day, because the laughter was more than a moment of mockery. It was a revelation of a deeper truth often hides behind polite words, behind professional smiles, behind carefully chosen language. But sometimes prejudice exposes itself in unguarded laughter, in that raw, careless sound that reveals what people truly believe. And when it does, it offers clarity. Clarity that the path ahead will not be without resistance. Clarity that the work of breaking barriers is far from over. Clarity that dignity will always be tested, not in the easy moments, but in the ones where humanity shows its ugliest face. Yet laughter cannot rewrite the truth. No matter how loud it echoed in that room, it could not change the fact of her achievement, her title, her role. It could not erase the years of sacrifice and the credentials she carried. And most importantly, it could not take away the unshakable belief she had in herself. The sound of laughter is temporary. It fills a room for a moment, then fades into silence. But dignity, when lived with conviction, carries across time. That day, though the staff laughed, what endured was not their mockery but her composure. What lingered was not their disbelief but her unwavering presence. And so, while the sound of laughter echoed, it never defined her. For laughter, when used as a weapon, has no lasting power against the steady resolve of someone who knows exactly who they are. Memory has a way of shaping how we carry ourselves in the present. It is not just the collection of moments we recall. It is the foundation on which our character is built. For the black CEO, as she stood in a room that refused to recognize her, memory was both her shield and her strength. Every step she took carried with it the weight of where she had come from and the echoes of those who had come before her. She remembered the neighborhood where she grew up. It was not a place of wealth or privilege, but a place where every dollar stretched, every opportunity had to be fought for, and every dream seemed just a little out of reach. She remembered the sound of her mother's voice in the early mornings, urging her to study harder, to believe in herself when the world gave her reasons not to. She remembered her father, who returned home late from long shifts, his hands worn from labor, but still managing to smile as if to say, "This is what sacrifice looks like, and it is worth it." She remembered the nights she stayed up at a small wooden desk, textbooks piled high, exhaustion pulling at her, but determination keeping her awake. She remembered how teachers sometimes overlooked her, how classmates underestimated her, how doors that should have been open were often shut. Yet every barrier became a lesson, every rejection a reminder that her worth was not defined by anyone else's perception. The weight of memory also included the struggles of generations before her. She thought of her grandmother, who told stories of working as a maid for families who never saw her as more than background. That same grandmother, though denied access to education, passed down wisdom that no classroom could teach, that dignity must be held onto even when the world tries to strip it away. She thought of ancestors who had endured far worse, those who were not even allowed to walk freely into banks, offices, or schools. She was living the dreams they never had the chance to live. With that truth came a responsibility she carried with honor. Memory was not a burden for her. It was a reminder of what was possible. She understood that the challenges she faced were not isolated events, but part of a larger story of progress. Every laugh directed at her, every doubt cast her way, was an echo of battles fought long before she was born. And if those who came before her had persevered in times of far greater darkness, then she could do the same in this moment. She also remembered her victories. The first scholarship letter that arrived in the mail, proving that her hard work had not gone unnoticed. The day she walked across the stage to accept her degree, her family cheering with pride. Their sacrifices validated in that single moment. The late nights working on her first business plan, when exhaustion tempted her to quit, but hope pushed her forward. Each triumph, no matter how small, became part of the foundation she stood on. Carrying the weight of memory meant understanding that she was never walking alone. Every step forward was supported by the steps of countless others. Every achievement was not just hers, but a continuation of a legacy that stretched far behind her and reached far ahead of her. This awareness gave her a strength that no mockery could erode. Memory also gave her perspective. When confronted with arrogance or doubt, and she could look beyond the present insult and see the larger picture. She could recognize that laughter fades, prejudice shifts, but perseverance endures. She could recall the times when people had doubted her before, how those same people later had to acknowledge her success. Memory taught her that moments of humiliation are temporary, but the lessons drawn from them can last a lifetime. The weight of memory is not light, but it is powerful. It is the reminder that no struggle is wasted, no hardship meaningless, no sacrifice forgotten. For her, memory was a living force, guiding her, grounding her, and reminding her that everything she faced was part of a story much bigger than herself. Is often misunderstood. Many believe it is shown in loud declarations, in swift retaliation, in meeting insults with equal force. But true power, the kind that endures, the kind that leaves an impression, lies not in the reflex to strike back, but in the discipline to hold steady. The Black CEO knew this truth, and in the moment when she was mocked in her own space, she chose the path that few are strong enough to walk, the path of restraint. Restraint is not a weakness. It is, in fact, the most difficult form of strength. When the sting of laughter rose in that bank, when the weight of disrespect pressed against her, every natural instinct urged her to respond. To raise her voice, to demand recognition, to remind everyone present of who she was and what she had achieved. But she understood that giving in to those instincts would have given her detractors exactly what they wanted, a reaction that could be twisted, minimized, or dismissed. Instead, she chose silence, composure, and calm. There is a dignity in refusing to descend to the level of those who mock you. Restraint says, I will not allow you to dictate my behavior. I will not let your smallness shrink my greatness. By holding her ground with quiet strength, she turned their laughter into a mirror of their own pettiness. What they intended to diminish her only ended up diminishing themselves. Her choice echoed the lessons she had carried all her life. As a young girl, her mother had often told her that dignity is not proven in the easy moments, but in the hard ones. Anyone can smile when they are praised. Anyone can stand tall when they are celebrated. But only the truly powerful can keep their head high when they are doubted, dismissed, or ridiculed. That is the essence of restraint, the refusal to let another person's actions dictate your worth. In that moment, she embodied this lesson. She did not slam her hand on the desk. She did not raise her voice above theirs. She simply stood in the space with grace, letting her presence speak louder than any words could. Restraint became her shield, and dignity her weapon. Restraint also requires vision. To practice it is to see beyond the present insult and to fix your eyes on the larger purpose. The CEO knew that every second spent reacting in anger was a second stolen from the greater goal she was destined to achieve. Her silence was not surrender. It was strategy. It was the understanding that the truest form of leadership is not in dominating a moment, but in preserving the power to shape what comes after. And restraint has ripple effects. To the onlookers in that room, some silent, some unsure, complicit. The sight of her composure was unforgettable. Even those who did not laugh could not ignore the contrast between her quiet strength and the careless arrogance of their peers. Though few would admit it, restraint often carries more weight than retaliation, for it lingers in memory long after the noise of the moment fades. History, too, offers its testimony. Some of the greatest leaders the world has ever known, leaders who transformed nations, injustice, and shifted the course of history, practiced restraint in the face of ridicule. They understood that sometimes the loudest answer is silence, and the strongest move is stillness. It is a kind of power that does not flash, but endures. For her, restraint was not about ignoring the insult. She felt the sting as any person would. But she also knew that to lash out would be to hand her dignity over to those least deserving of it. Instead, she held it close, refusing to let go. In that act of restraint, she reminded herself, and everyone watching, that true leadership is measured not in how you respond when respected, but in how you carry yourself when disrespected. The power of restraint is one of life's most difficult lessons. It requires courage, patience, and faith in oneself. It demands that you trust your worth so deeply that you do not need to prove it in the heat of the moment. And when practiced with conviction, it becomes a force stronger than ridicule, stronger than mockery, stronger than doubt. No one rises alone. Behind every great achievement, every act of courage, and every moment of transformation, there are others who lend their strength. The Black CEO understood this truth deeply. In the face of ridicule and resistance, she did not rely solely on her individual willpower. She drew upon the collective power of those who believed in her, those who supported her, those who shared her vision for justice and respect. Gathering allies is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of wisdom. Leaders throughout history have known that their greatest strength comes not from standing apart, but from bringing others together. The CEO had spent her life building relationships based on integrity, trust, and mutual respect. So when the moment came to face injustice, she did not stand isolated. She stood backed by a network of allies who were ready to act. Her allies came from many places. There were the lawyers, sharp and precise, who had watched her career unfold with admiration and had pledged to defend her rights with every tool at their disposal. They brought not only legal expertise, but a shared conviction that the law must protect fairness and truth. There were her mentors, older voices of wisdom who had guided her through challenges before and reminded her that she was never without support. Their counsel gave her clarity, and their faith gave her courage. There were also her peers, colleagues, who had worked alongside her, who had witnessed firsthand her dedication and her ability to lead. Some had been in boardrooms with her late into the night, hammering out strategies, solving problems, shaping visions. These peers became allies because they had seen her integrity in action, and they knew that her character could not be diminished by mockery. And perhaps most importantly, there were the quiet allies, family members, friends, and community members who had no official role in the matter, but whose encouragement sustained her spirit. Their words of love, their prayers, their reminders of her worth were the unseen but essential reinforcements that gave her the strength to move forward. Gathering allies is more than assembling people. It is about building a coalition of shared belief. It is about finding those who not only stand with you in moments of triumph, but who are willing to stand with you in the face of doubt, ridicule, or injustice. The Black CEO's allies did not simply show up because she asked. They showed up because they believed in the values she represented. There is a profound lesson in this: success is not an individual pursuit. It is a collective effort. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things together create change that no individual could achieve alone. Just as communities rebuild after storms, just as movements for justice grow stronger when voices unite, too do individuals become unstoppable when surrounded by allies who share their vision. Gathering allies also requires humility. It requires the recognition that no matter how capable one may be, there is always strength in seeking help, leaning on others in opening space for their talents to join with yours. Too often, people mistake leadership for independence. In truth, leadership is the art of interdependence, the ability to inspire others to walk with you, honor their role in the journey. For the CEO, The gathering of her allies was not a sudden act born of desperation. It was the result of years of relationship building, of treating people with respect, of investing in others as much as she invested in herself. Allies are not gathered in moments of crisis. They are cultivated long before, in the quiet, consistent work of living with integrity. That is why, when the moment of challenge came, her allies were already prepared to stand by her side. In every great story of resilience, there is a moment when the individual becomes the collective, when the burden carried alone becomes shared across many shoulders. That is the power of allies. They remind us that we are never as isolated as we feel, that we are never as powerless as we seem. Together, people can face ridicule, injustice, and doubt with strength that multiplies rather than diminishes. The gathering of allies is both a strategy and a testament to the human spirit. It shows that progress is not built on isolation, but on connection. It proves that even in moments of humiliation or challenge, there is always a greater force to be found in unity. There are moments in life when presence itself becomes a declaration. Hours after being ridiculed in the very space she had helped shape, the Black CEO returned to her bank. But this time, she did not return as an individual navigating mockery. She returned clothed in the full weight of her authority. Authority is not always about volume or force. True authority does not need to announce itself. It does not need to boast or threaten. It carries itself quietly, yet unmistakably. It is recognized in posture, in composure, in the way a person takes up space without asking permission. When she walked back through those glass doors, her authority was undeniable. The difference was not only in how she was accompanied. Though her allies were present, their presence was not what defined her. The difference was in the invisible shift, the unspoken reminder of who she was and what she had earned. Authority is born of legitimacy, and hers was undeniable. Years of experience, leadership, and sacrifice had made her more than qualified. The title she carried was not borrowed. It was not handed to her as a courtesy. It was hers by right. Now she chose to embody it fully. Those who had laughed before now found themselves silent, their smirks replaced by hesitation. Authority has a way of exposing arrogance for what it is, fragile and fleeting. What they once dismissed, they now had to confront face to face. Their laughter had no power in the presence of legitimacy. Her return was more than a personal vindication. It was a symbol of what it means to reclaim space. Too often, individuals are pushed aside, doubted, diminished in places where they rightfully belong. To return with authority is to refuse erasure. It is to stand once again where others tried to exclude you, and to do so with even greater strength. Authority is also about clarity. She did not return to shout, to argue, or to belittle. She returned with calm precision, with documentation, with allies who reflected her legitimacy. There was no need for theatrics because the truth spoke louder than any performance. Authority, when real, does not compete with mockery. It overshadows it entirely. For those who witnessed her return, the contrast was stark. Only hours earlier, she had been treated as an outsider, someone to be doubted and ridiculed. Now she stood as the rightful leader, her presence shifting the very atmosphere of the room. This transformation was not magic. It was not sudden. It was the natural unfolding of truth that those who laugh at dignity eventually must reckon with it. The return of authority is not only a personal act, it resonates outward. It speaks to every person who has ever been underestimated. It reminds them that dismissal does not define destiny. It shows that legitimacy cannot be erased by mockery, and that authority, once claimed, cannot be taken away by disbelief. She carried herself with a calm that was both powerful and disarming. Authority does not require aggression. In fact, its strength lies in restraint, in the quiet confidence that says, "I belong here, and nothing you say can change that." That kind of presence unsettles those who once dismissed it, because it forces them to confront not only her legitimacy, but also their own failure to recognize it. Authority also commands respect beyond the immediate moment. Though some resisted, though some might never admit it, the image of her return would remain in their memory. The sight of someone mocked and dismissed only to return stronger leaves an impression that cannot be erased. It is a reminder that arrogance is temporary, but authority, when rooted in truth, endures. Her return demonstrated that leadership is not defined by the absence of opposition, but by the ability to reclaim space after facing it. Authority is not fragile, it is not easily shaken by laughter or doubt. True authority grows stronger under pressure, and when it returns, it does so with even greater force. The return of authority is one of the most powerful images a person can witness. It is not loud, it is not violent. It is steady, confident, deniable. It does not ask for validation. It embodies it. It does not chase respect, it commands it. And when authority returns to the place it was once denied, it redefines the space itself, reminding all who are present that truth, in the end, is always stronger than mockery. There are sounds that define a moment: the roar of applause, the thunder of protest, the hum of conversation. But sometimes, what defines a moment most powerfully is not the sound itself, but the absence of it. After the laughter that once filled the bank, there came a silence. It was not the silence of peace nor the silence of agreement. It was the heavy, unmistakable silence that followed the collapse of arrogance. Mockery is loud because it is insecure. It shouts, it laughs, it belittles, hoping that noise will disguise weakness. Those who mocked the black CEO believed that their ladder would diminish her, that their sound would carry weight. But when she returned in dignity and authority, their laughter fell away, and what remained was silence, thick, uncomfortable, and undeniable. Silence, in moments like this, speaks louder than words. It tells the truth that no one dares to admit aloud. It reveals shame without requiring confession. It exposes those who once carried themselves with smug certainty, now stripped of their false confidence. Silence becomes a mirror, forcing people to see themselves without distraction. The silence after mockery is also a kind of reckoning. For those who had laughed, it was a reminder that their behavior was not only cruel, but misplaced. They had mistaken arrogance for insight, prejudice for professionalism. Now, with their assumptions shattered, they had no words left to defend themselves. Their silence was an acknowledgement of their failure, even if unspoken. For her, that silence was not about revenge. She did not seek to humiliate in return. Instead, she allowed the silence to stand as its own testimony. She did not need to raise her voice. She did not need to point fingers. Because the absence of laughter, the absence of defiance, was enough. In that quiet, her dignity spoke louder than any response could. There is a profound power in allowing silence to do the work. It is tempting, in moments of vindication, to fill the air with declarations, to remind everyone of their error. But wisdom often lies in restraint. To let silence linger is to give people space to confront their own actions. It forces reflection in a way that words often cannot. The silence after mockery also resonated beyond the walls of that bank. It symbolized something larger. That prejudice, no matter how loud it may sound in the moment, does not endure. What endures is the quiet strength of those who rise above it. That silence became a lesson to everyone present. That dignity is not defeated by ridicule, and that truth eventually commands quiet. For those who watched without laughing, the silence carried its own weight. They had been witnesses to arrogance, but also to composure. In the quiet, they saw the stark contrast between cruelty and grace. They saw how quickly the balance of power shifted, not through shouting or force, but through the undeniable presence of truth. That silence would remain in their memory, a reminder of what it looks like when dignity outlasts mockery. Silence can be uncomfortable, but it is also clarifying. It strips away noise, leaving only what is real. And in that moment, what was real was undeniable: the CEO's legitimacy, her authority, her resilience. The laughter had been a mask, but the silence revealed the truth beneath it. In life, many of us will face moments when others laugh, dismiss, or ridicule. Those sounds can wound, but they do not last. What lasts is the silence that follows, when reality settles in, when arrogance fades, when truth makes itself known. That silence is not empty. It is full of meaning, full of acknowledgement, full of lessons. After mockery is a reminder that time has a way of shifting power. What feels loud and overwhelming in one moment can dissolve into nothingness in the next. What once seemed dominant can be replaced by stillness that tells a deeper story. For her, that silence was not just an absence of sound, it was the presence of justice. Humiliation has a way of etching itself deeply into memory. It stings, lingers, and often returns uninvited, whispering that one is less than worthy, less than capable, less than deserving. For many, it becomes a shadow that haunts their steps. But in rare and powerful moments, humiliation is not the end of a story. It becomes the soil from which triumph grows. What determines whether humiliation destroys or transforms is not the cruelty of others, but the response of the one who suffers it. To endure humiliation is to stand in the fire of ridicule, mockery, and doubt. To rise after it is to prove that the fire refines rather than consumes. The black CEO, dismissed and laughed at by those who should have recognized her authority, faced that fire. And yet, instead of bowing her head, she transformed the sting of disrespect into fuel for triumph. Triumph, in this sense, is not about revenge. It is not about repaying cruelty with cruelty. True triumph is higher. It is about refusing to let humiliation define the boundaries of possibility. It is about choosing dignity when others strip it away. It is about embodying the truth that worth is not given by others. It is carried within. The path from humiliation to triumph is not immediate. It demands composure in the face of insult, patience when anger would be easier, and vision when circumstances seem designed to obscure it. She demonstrated that the way to transform a moment of degradation is not to collapse under its weight, but to rise so steadily that the very act of rising becomes undeniable. In her return, she embodied what many ordinary people quietly do every day. Workers overlooked for their potential but continuing to give their best. Parents underestimated by circumstance but still provided for their children. Communities mocked or ignored but still finding ways to create beauty, resilience, and hope. Triumph, after all, is not reserved for the powerful or privileged. It is available to anyone willing to endure humiliation without allowing it to steal their dignity. To turn humiliation into triumph is also to rewrite the meaning of the moment. Laughter meant to belittle is remembered instead as the backdrop against which dignity shone brighter. Words spoken to wounds lose their power when they are met with composure. Humiliation, in this light, is not the final word. It is the prelude to something greater. Her example reminds us that triumph is not just about outcomes, it's about transformation. The cruel attempt to make her feel small became the stage on which her strength was revealed. The space where she was mocked became the same space where she returned, stronger and more resolute. Triumph is not only about winning, it is about showing that even in the face of disrespect, dignity can prevail. What makes this kind of triumph powerful is that it does not erase the humiliation. It redeems it. The memory of laughter does not vanish, but it loses its sting. Instead of being a scar, it becomes a symbol of resilience. The attempt to diminish becomes a reminder of how much higher she rose. This is the essence of transformation, taking what was meant to break and turning it into the very thing that builds. In the larger human story, this transformation has echoed time and again. Leaders who were dismissed as dreamers, communities written off as powerless, individuals told they were incapable. All of them have known the sting of humiliation. Yet, those same individuals and communities have shown that humiliation is not an ending but a doorway. On the other side of that doorway is the triumph of persistence, the triumph of dignity, the triumph of refusing to surrender to mockery. The lesson here is not only personal, it is collective. Every society, every generation faces moments when humiliation threatens to silence voices and crush spirits. The call in those moments is to remember that triumph is still possible. Humiliation, no matter how sharp, is temporary. Dignity, courage, and perseverance can turn even the most painful wounds into stories of victory. Her triumph after humiliation became a symbol of hope. It testified that laughter fades, arrogance dissolves, and disrespect loses its grip. What remains is the resilience of those who endure and the quiet, but undeniable victory of those who rise higher than anyone believed they could. Justice is not simply an abstract concept written in law books or echoed in courtrooms. It is the lifeblood of a fair society, the invisible thread that binds communities together and assures every individual that their dignity is recognized and protected. Where justice thrives, trust flourishes. Where it falters, doubt and division creep in. The power of legal justice lies in its ability to transform that invisible promise into tangible action. Action that restores balance, rights wrongs, and upholds the dignity of those who have been wronged. Throughout history, the law has often been tested by moments of inequality and arrogance. People in positions of privilege have, at times, used their power to silence, belittle, or deny others their rightful place. Yet, What makes justice extraordinary is its potential to pierce through arrogance with truth. It levels the ground where prejudice once built walls. It serves as a voice when silence is imposed, a shield when dignity is threatened, a compass when society seems to drift from fairness. Legal justice is not about vengeance. It is not about repaying insult with insult or humiliation with humiliation. Its strength lies in order, fairness, and accountability. It reminds us that while individuals may falter, systems of law exist to hold them accountable. In that accountability lies the reassurance that the values of equality and fairness are more than ideals, they are enforceable truths. For the individual who has been mocked, denied, or dismissed, the arrival of justice is a profound affirmation. It signals that their worth does not depend on the biases of others, but on rights that are unshakable. It restores balance not through anger, but through principle. When lawyers step forward, when courts deliberate, when verdicts are delivered, it is not only the outcome that matters. It is the message that no one, no matter how small or overlooked, outside the protection of justice. The power of legal justice also extends beyond the individual. It is communal. When one person is defended, when one wrong is corrected, it reinforces the security of all. A community watches and learns that disrespect cannot go unchecked, that arrogance cannot trample rights without consequence. Justice, then, becomes a lesson as much as a resolution. It teaches everyone that fairness is not optional, it is essential. In many ways, legal justice is a guardian of hope. It does not erase the pain of humiliation, but it assures that such pain will not be the final word. It transforms moments of disrespect into opportunities for renewal. And though the process may seem slow, every case argued, every judgment made, every precedent set contributes to a wider tapestry where fairness is not the exception but the expectation. Consider the ordinary people who rely on justice every day: workers denied fair treatment, families navigating disputes, communities confronting prejudice. In each case, the law holds within it the possibility of balance. It may not always be swift, it may not always feel complete, but when it is pursued with integrity, it brings light into spaces that once felt suffocating. The power of legal justice lies in its persistence, in its refusal to abandon those who have been wronged. Justice is also deeply symbolic. When lawyers enter a room on behalf of someone overlooked, they carry more than arguments. They carry the weight of equality. They remind everyone present that the individual they defend is not invisible, not disposable, and not alone. Legal justice transforms private humiliation into a public recognition of worth. It takes what was hidden and shines light upon it, ensuring that dignity is acknowledged before all. Yet, the power of legal justice is not confined to grand cases or headlines. Its true strength is found in the daily reassurance it provides, that there is a structure strong enough to stand against arrogance, a system designed to protect the vulnerable, and a principle that says no person is above accountability. It is this steady presence that builds faith in society and gives individuals the courage to continue forward even after they have been mocked or denied. When justice arrives, it does more than correct a single wrong. It reaffirms the larger promise of fairness that holds communities together. It declares that truth is stronger than ridicule, that rights are stronger than prejudice, that dignity will always find a defender. That is the power of legal justice, not only to restore balance in a single moment, but to strengthen the foundation of equality for everyone. Hope is the quiet force that moves people to attempt what seems impossible. It is the whisper in the silence of doubt, the spark that keeps ambition alive when obstacles tower high, and the companion of every person who dares to dream. For every dreamer, hope is not a luxury, it is a lifeline. Without it, vision fades and effort dwindles. With it, even the smallest steps forward become powerful acts of defiance against limitation. Dreamers come in all forms. They are students studying late into the night for a better future. They are workers who rise before dawn, carrying the weight of their family's needs on tired shoulders. They are artists who believe that their voice, their brushstroke, or their song might one day inspire a generation. They are leaders who refuse to accept the way things are and instead imagine how things could be. Each carries within them a vision of something better, and each is sustained by the steady pulse of hope. Hope does not guarantee ease. In fact, the path of a dreamer is rarely smooth. There are setbacks, failures, and days when discouragement presses hard against the will to continue. But what hope provides is a reason to rise again. It tells the dreamer that tomorrow can be different from today, that the story is not finished, that there is more ahead than the present struggle. Hope is the resilience that transforms defeat into a stepping stone rather than a dead end. The power of hope lies in its ability to transform perspective. Where others see obstacles, the dreamer fueled by hope sees possibilities. Where others see rejection, the dreamer sees redirection. Hope allows the heart to interpret adversity not as a final verdict, but as a chapter in a larger journey. It is this mindset that has propelled countless individuals from ordinary beginnings to extraordinary impact. History is filled with examples of dreamers who refused to let hope die, who persevered through endless experiments before discovering breakthroughs that changed the world. Social reformers who endured ridicule and resistance before their movements reshaped nations. Innovators who believed in ideas others dismissed as foolish, only to see those ideas revolutionize daily life. What unites them is not just talent or opportunity, the relentless hope that their vision mattered and their work could make a difference. For the ordinary person, this lesson is just as profound. Hope is not reserved for the famous or powerful. It belongs to the parent teaching their child to believe in themselves, to the young graduate searching for their first opportunity, to the worker starting over after failure. Every dreamer, no matter their station, strength and hope's promise that effort is not wasted and that possibility always exists. Hope also carries a collective dimension. When communities share it, entire societies can change. Neighborhoods, once dismissed as broken, can revive with the energy of hopeful residents. Schools can transform when teachers and students believe in the possibility of progress. Nations can renew themselves when leaders call their people not to despair, but to believe in the strength of unity, resilience, and vision. Hope is the seed of collective transformation, just as it is the root of personal perseverance. The most powerful aspect of hope is that it multiplies when shared. One person's perseverance can inspire another to keep going. One story of resilience can remind countless others that they too can endure. Hope creates ripples that extend beyond the dreamer and into the lives of strangers who find courage simply by knowing someone else refused to give up. It is contagious in the best possible way, spreading strength where weakness once held sway. For every dreamer standing at the edge of doubt, hope is the invitation to take another step. It does not erase the challenge, but it makes the challenge bearable. It does not promise immediate victory, but it ensures that the pursuit itself is meaningful. In the quietest moments of struggle, hope says, keep going. And in the brightest moments of success, hope whispers, share this light with others. A struggle has a way of revealing truths that comfort never can. When adversity strikes, it strips away illusions and forces individuals and communities to confront who they truly are. In those moments, the human spirit discovers its deepest reserves of strength, and people often realize that their power lies not in isolation but in unity. Struggle, though painful, has the potential to bind us together in ways that success alone cannot. Throughout history, communities have faced storms, economic hardship, social upheaval, injustice, natural disasters. While each trial carried its own weight, the common thread has been the resilience found in solidarity. When neighbors opened their doors to one another, when strangers stood side by side to rebuild what was lost, when voices rose together to demand fairness, unity turned despair into momentum. The lesson is timeless in the furnace of struggle, a forge that are stronger than steel. Unity through struggle does not mean uniformity. It does not erase individuality, nor does it deny difference. Instead, it is the recognition that diversity of perspective and experience can be a strength when woven together toward a common purpose. The farmer, the teacher, the worker, the leader, all contribute unique threads to the same fabric of resilience. When hardship presses down, the combined force of many hands, hearts, and minds can lift burdens that no single person could carry alone. The beauty of unity born from struggle is its authenticity. It is not theoretical, it is lived. People do not come together because it is convenient, but because it is necessary. A community that has faced fire together knows the value of standing side by side. A family that has endured loss together knows the strength of shared grief. A nation that has fought for justice together knows the pride of collective victory. These bonds are not easily broken because they are formed in the crucible of shared experience. Struggle also teaches humility. It reminds the strong that they, too, can falter, and it gives the vulnerable courage to rise. In unity, hierarchies of pride fade away, and what matters is not status but shared humanity. In this way, adversity becomes a great equalizer, drawing people closer by emphasizing what they have in common rather than what separates them. Consider the power of small acts in difficult times. A meal shared with a neighbor in need. A hand extended to help someone rebuild. A word of encouragement spoken when hope feels thin. These gestures, multiplied across a community, create a culture of resilience that transcends hardship itself. They remind everyone that no one is truly alone in their struggle. This collective spirit of care can turn the darkest chapters into foundations for renewal. Unity through struggle also reshapes identity. Individuals who once saw themselves as ordinary find strength they never imagined. Communities that once felt divided discover purpose in working together. Nations that once doubted their direction emerge with a clearer vision. Struggle is not merely endured, it is transformed into a source of collective pride and identity. It becomes the story people tell themselves about who they are and what they can overcome together. The enduring gift of unity is its ability to outlast the struggle itself. When the hardship subsides, the bonds remain. The trust built in difficulty becomes the foundation for cooperation in peace. The courage discovered in adversity becomes the courage to innovate, to lead, to imagine new possibilities. Unity forged in trial ensures that communities are not only survivors but builders of a stronger future. Above all, unity through struggle is a reminder of the profound truth that human beings are designed for connection. Isolation weakens, solidarity strengthens. Division erodes, but cooperation rebuilds. Struggle exposes the fragility of going it alone and the power of coming together. It shows us that even in moments of pain, we are capable of creating beauty, resilience, and hope, not in spite of hardship, but because of it. The future is not something that arrives fully formed. It is something we create with each choice, each act of courage, and each step of perseverance. It is shaped not by chance, but by the will of people who believe that tomorrow can be brighter than today. The most enduring truth of progress is this: the future belongs to those who dare to build it together. When we speak of the future, it is tempting to imagine it as distant, abstract, or beyond our control. Yet every decision we make, how we treat others, how we invest in our communities, how we nurture the next generation, becomes a building block of what lies ahead. The future is written not by a few, but by all of us in the countless ordinary choices that accumulate into extraordinary change. Building a shared future begins with vision. It requires the ability to see beyond the immediate horizon, to imagine what could be rather than settle for what is. Visionaries are not just leaders in high offices or innovators in laboratories. They are parents who dream of better lives for their children, teachers who nurture untapped potential, workers who show up every day with dedication, and young people who see possibility in places others overlook. Each carries a fragment of the vision for a better tomorrow, and together these fragments create a mosaic of collective aspiration. But vision alone is not enough. The future demands action, steadfast, persistent, and often sacrificial. It asks us to build bridges where divisions exist, to lift others even when our own burdens are heavy, keep moving forward even when progress feels slow. The future does not emerge from easy paths. It grows out of determination, cooperation, and the refusal to give up. The work of building together is not always glamorous. Sometimes it is quiet and unseen. The neighbor who plants a tree that will shade children decades from now, the volunteer who gives time to strengthen their community, the mentor who offers guidance that shapes another's destiny. These acts may seem small, but they ripple outward, becoming part of a future where compassion and responsibility are the cornerstones of progress. Shared effort also requires shared responsibility. No single person can shoulder the task of building alone, just as no single stone can support an entire structure. It is when individuals, families, communities, and nations align their efforts that real transformation occurs. The farmer and the scientist, the builder and the teacher, the artist and the leader, each role is essential and each contribution adds weight to the collective foundation. In this shared endeavor, no one is insignificant and no one is expendable. Future we build together also reflects the values we choose to uphold. If we value justice, then the structures we create must embody fairness. If we value compassion, then the systems we design must uplift the vulnerable. If we value progress, then we must embrace innovation and courage, even when it disrupts comfort. The values we carry into tomorrow will define not only what we achieve, but who we become as a people. Building a shared future also means confronting challenges with unity. Inequality, division, climate change, economic hardship. These are not problems for some, but for all. They cannot be solved in isolation or postponed for another time. They require the collective strength of people determined to act not just for themselves, but for generations yet unborn. It is in this shared responsibility that the true spirit of humanity is revealed, the willingness to sacrifice in the present so others may inherit something greater. Most importantly, the future we build together is one of hope. Hope is the architect of resilience, the engineer of possibility, the compass that keeps us moving forward, even when shadows loom large. It is hope that tells us no challenge is insurmountable, no dream too distant, and no community beyond redemption. When hope is shared, it becomes a force greater than any single obstacle. The future will not be handed down, it must be crafted. It will not be written for us, it will be written by us. Every dreamer, every worker, every family, and every leader has a place in this work. The blueprint is not fixed, the outcome not predetermined. What we build depends on the courage we show, the choices we make, and the unity we sustain. Together, brick by brick, hand in hand, we shape not just a future, but the legacy of who we are and who we choose to be. This story is not just about a bank. It is about something far larger. A story of dignity, justice, and the unshakable belief that perseverance in the face of adversity can transform the impossible into the inevitable. It begins with an ordinary day that quickly turns extraordinary. A woman, brilliant, determined, and accomplished, walked into the very institution she helped build, expecting respect, only to be met with laughter and scorn. In that moment, the weight of history pressed down to. How many times have people of vision been mocked before their brilliance was recognized? How many leaders have faced rejection before their triumph? Yet this story is also about us, all of us, about the resilience within every community, courage found in ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and the power of unity when injustice dares to rear its head, because this is not just her fight. It is a mirror to the struggles faced by so many, a reminder that progress is never given freely but claimed through perseverance, courage, and the refusal to be silent. What began as a moment of humiliation inside the walls of a bank ended as a triumph that echoed far beyond its marble floors. The staff who once laughed fell silent, confronted not only with the truth of her authority, but with the undeniable weight of justice. The black CEO who was mocked, dismissed, and underestimated proved that dignity and perseverance are far stronger than prejudice and arrogance. Her return, flanked by her legal team, was more than a personal victory. It was a symbol that no amount of ridicule can erase rightful achievement, a symbol that the battles fought by one can become a beacon of hope for many, a symbol that the walls built to keep people out can, with courage and resolve, down stone by stone. In her triumph, she carried the stories of those who came before her, ancestors who dreamed of a day when respect and justice would not be negotiable. She carried the voices of those who still struggle to be seen, who still fight to be heard, who still stand at doors that refuse to open. And she reminded us all that every act of courage ripples outward, touching lives far beyond the moment itself. This was not just the story of a bank. It was the story of resilience, of a woman who refused to be silenced, and of the unshakable truth that progress bends toward those who dare to claim it. And so, as her footsteps echoed through the silent halls that once rang with laughter, they left behind a lesson carved deeper than stone or paper that no one can strip away the dignity of a person who knows their worth, and no barrier can withstand the power of perseverance, unity, and justice. What began as a moment of humiliation inside the walls of a bank ended as a triumph that echoed far beyond its marble floors. The staff who once laughed fell silent, confronted not only with the truth of her authority, but with the undeniable weight of justice. The black CEO who was mocked, dismissed, and underestimated proved that dignity and perseverance are far stronger than prejudice and arrogance. Her return, flanked by her legal team, was more than a personal victory. It was a symbol that no amount of ridicule can erase rightful achievement, a symbol that the battles fought by one can become a beacon of hope for many, symbol that the walls built to keep people out can, with courage and resolve, be torn down stone by stone. In her triumph, she carried the stories of those who came before her, ancestors who dreamed of a day when respect and justice would not be negotiable. She carried the voices of those who still struggle to be seen, who still fight to be heard, who still stand at doors that refuse to open. And she reminded us all that every act of courage ripples outward, touching lives far beyond the moment itself. This was not just the story of a bank. It was the story of resilience, of a woman who refused to be silenced, and of the unshakable truth that progress bends toward those who dare to claim it. And so, as her footsteps echoed through the silent halls that once rang with laughter, they left behind a lesson carved deeper than stone or paper, that no one can strip away the dignity of a person who knows their worth, and no barrier can withstand the power of perseverance, unity, and justice.